Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of the new Justin Timberlake LP, The 2020 Experience. Justin Timberlake is a singer, songwriter, actor, entertainer. I haven't really been a fan of his my entire life, but I guess you could say I grew up with his music in a sense, like many people my age who heard tons of songs that he was featured on singing through NSYNC, which was a boy band that was really hot during the boy band wars of the late 90s, early 2000s, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, 98 Degrees. Justin Timberlake is pretty much the sole person out of that whole era of boy band music who was able to kind of make a worthwhile and relevant solo career. In 2002, Justin came out with his pretty successful solo full-length debut, but 4 years later, he was able to build himself up as more than just a boy band veteran, more a creative mind in modern pop music with the LP Future Sex Love Sounds, which was a very modern record, a very poppy record, a very cleanly produced record with huge singles such as Sexy Back, and showcased a lot of influence coming from artists such as Michael Jackson and Prince. It was a mainstream pop record that not only appealed to mainstream pop fans, but sort of seemed to get the okay for music critics and music snobs as well. And I think that was mostly because of the ambition that it displayed in comparison with other albums in its style. All of the interludes, the medleys of songs on this album, the incredibly long, relatively song lengths. I wouldn't say the LP is all that deep or engaging in terms of subject matter or lyrical material, but if Justin Timberlake's music sits within your usual musical stomping grounds, I see no reason why this LP wouldn't sort of blow your mind in a sense, because Justin does go into this full-length album and his new one with a bit of a complete vision, looking at the album as a whole, wanting to have a series of different songs of different styles, different flavors that all sort of complement one another in a sense. Now, for this third full-length album, Justin comes back again to Virginia record producer Timbaland, who has produced more tracks on more albums than a single person can even count. And with Timbaland, Justin again brings longer tracks, some pretty diverse instrumentals, and a little bit of a hip-hop flair here and there. You've got soul on this LP, you've got dance pop on this LP, contemporary R&B, and a few tracks that very clearly reference Justin's boy band background. And I can't really say in 3 albums, or even really since NSYNC, Justin's strengths in music have altered that much. If there's anything that stands out on this LP as being a strong positive, it's pretty much the hooks. Good or bad, if you listen to this album enough, or if at least you're paying attention to it the first time around it's running through, the hooks are going to stick in your head. Junkie for your love, smacking that strawberry bubblegum, as long as I got my suit and tie. And pretty consistently through this entire LP, Justin sings in his angelic falsetto, which is smoother than a baby's butt. However, I can't really say I'm all that sold on the maturity that I feel like most people are kind of tagging onto this album, and you know, hell, that this album itself implies on itself. Because honestly, I just don't see the separator that most people do between NSYNC JT and 2020 Experience JT. I mean, sure, what we're hearing on this album feels a little more glitzy and a little more glamorous, but I feel like the curtain is lifted pretty quickly once we start the album off with the song Pusher Love Girl, which is by all means a catchy song with some sweet vocals on it, but the love, drug, metaphor thing is kind of old, tired, and it's not like Justin really brings a new angle to the concept. And to hear him singing out toward the end of the track like, my cocaine, what feels like a red carpet treatment continues with the next track, Suit and Tie. But the more I travel through this song, the more I feel like instead I'm kind of, you know, driving through a drive-through instead and ordering off the dollar menu with Jay-Z's dumbed down verse on this track, honestly. It doesn't even feel like he was trying to drum up a good flow on this song. So not only are the lyrics and the topics on this LP kind of weak, and don't even come at me with that thing like, oh Anthony, it's pop music, it's not supposed to be deep. You know, that's complete bullshit to me, because there's tons of great pop music out there that makes a strong and urgent and awesome statement, most notably some of Justin's influences. I don't know, Beat It is a pretty significant track, and I don't really think I need to go into all of the awesomely controversial imagery and statements that Prince put into his numerous albums. So honestly, I don't really think making pop music gives Justin an excuse for not singing about anything interesting, or at least having some clever lyricism. Now, the production on this LP doesn't really hold up when you give it some closer scrutiny either. Take the song Suit and Tie as an example again. The song is loaded with all of this instrumentation that isn't even real. Either it's completely synthesized with these really shrill, bad horns, or you've got all of these lazily chopped and looped harp samples dancing all around the track that really kind of give a harp sound, but don't really feel like they're playing anything significantly interesting musically. And one of the other lead singles on this thing, Mirrors, I mean, this to me is just proof that there's very little separation between 2020 Experience JT and NSYNC JT, because this song essentially sounds like an NSYNC song without every other member of NSYNC. And this song and many others on here, in terms of dynamic range of sound, they're all mysteriously thin. Honestly, there's not a lot of bass on this LP, not a lot of kick from the drums, and I would actually say that there are many tracks on here that do not have bass lines that are at least audible, which is kind of surprising for a record with a dance pop flavor, where the bass is really what kind of gets people moving, grooving. It's what creates the physical experience with music. It's what rumbles in your bones and gets you feeling the music. For me, a pop record with no bass has no case. The lush production isn't here, and it becomes even more apparent when Justin comes forward and copycats Michael Jackson on the track Let the Groove In, where we're getting this mishmash of a very joyous and fun and happy percussion. I mean, he might as well be screaming "Mama say, Mama sa, Mama pusa" over it. And the song, because of the lack of bass, fails to come through with just an infectious, undeniable groove, despite all of the sequenced percussion just rattling away throughout the track. The only semi-natural feeling song on this entire album is the song That Girl. Justin's voice sounds really good on it, soulful, sounds like he's having a lot of fun with the track. I like the melody, and I feel like the song owes its melody a little bit more to just nostalgia than it does great writing, but still, the song goes over without a hitch. Justin can be a good singer when he's not bogged down in cheesy hooks or bells and whistles. Like the closing track on this thing, whose instrumental is incredibly simple, with all of these ethereal, sort of drony, serene, reversed pianos just sort of twinkling away. There's some resonant bass tones coming through on the track that are pretty nice. And Justin sings over this instrumental beautifully with a lot of emotion. I'm really feeling this track. It was one of the moments where the 2020 Experience actually came through with some very pretty clarity. But for an album named the 2020 Experience, there are just too many instrumentals on this thing that have a very sort of unclear, murky quality to them. Like the song Tunnel Vision, which has these very obnoxious female vocal samples dancing all around the track, mucking up the rhythm, kind of hacking away at it in this really awkward way. To me, it kind of felt like it was shooting for something that felt as if it were inspired by the combination of hip-hop vocals and samples and Baroque instrumentation from Lana Del Rey, maybe even Death Grips in a sense. Not a direct influence, but what they were doing with these repetitious vocals felt kind of Death Grips-esque with how overbearing they were. But at the end of the day, it maybe sort of felt kind of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy inspired, but nowhere near as well executed. After listening to this LP numerous times, I just can't say that Justin Timberlake is a pop innovator or even a pop Prince. This LP is just light, music industry groomed entertainment. However, I mean, that's what I feel Justin kind of set out to do. That's all he really tries to do. I don't think he builds his music up to be this highfalutin thing that even people who listen to music a bit deeper can enjoy. Justin is just making the music he wants to make. As an entertainer, he lacks pretension, in my opinion. It's critics in the music industry that sort of tag on this higher quality level implication that typically gets talked about when you're discussing a new Justin Timberlake album. However, I don't hear any of the qualities that would actually make the 2020 Experience that. The sounds are lackluster, they're average, The lyrics, when they're not ridiculous, are just kind of not that clever, and the songwriting is hardly undeniable or revolutionary at its best. It's enjoyable. And as an added thing, the 2020 experience is hardly as eccentric or as interesting as the artists that influence it. The most adventurous thing this album has going for it are the song lengths. And this is Justin's longest album yet, and I do see that he wants to do something maybe a little bit stronger, like I said earlier, than most people in his musical ranks. However, because of all of these other things being an issue for me, to hear an 8-minute tune from Justin just does not feel that interesting. Plus, most of the tracks on here follow the same structure when they go longer. The regular, normal verse, chorus, verse structure of the song sort of goes on for 5 minutes or so, with an intro, possibly, especially on the track Suit and Tie, and then the remaining 2 or 3 minutes is kind of this weird interlude or variation that sort of ends the track out, which may or may not be as interesting as the song you just heard prior to it. Overall, I just wasn't feeling this album, honestly. Just kind of a light 5 to a decent 5 on this thing. But if you've given it a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? For sure, there were only a couple tracks on this LP that I disliked, but most of the album just kind of breezed by me. But here's another opinion.
Hi everyone, Couchy Chester here, and you heard opinion from Anthony, the internet music nerd, but my opinion is that Anthony is a hater and he doesn't like good music pop, and he is biased guy with lots of, he likes music loud and bad and not good to hear. And when he hears good, sweet music, he thinks it's bad, but it's really good.
How can you argue with that? Anthony Fantano, Justin Timberlake, forever.